I call the Honourable Sir Roger Douglas.
Mr Speaker, at the last election, the government blindly promised to invest in New Zealand's telecommunication infrastructure, in particular UFB. It was a blind promise because the National Party had no evidence, I should say, that such an investment was needed or would produce promising outcomes. 3 years down the track, there is still no evidence that this will benefit New Zealanders. This bill sees New Zealand embarking on the modern form of Muldoon's Think Big projects. Under this bill, the taxpayer will end up spending $1.5 billion on a gamble. I cannot condone such reckless spending, nor can Heather Roy. The remaining ACT members believe that this was a fundamental election promise made by our coalition partners and will therefore vote for it. This bill is a gamble because we simply do not know if it will bring any benefit whatsoever to New Zealand. There is a total lack of a cost-benefit analysis to justify spending taxpayers' money. With all significant interventions, the onus is on the government to show that the investment of taxpayers' money is warranted and beneficial to New Zealand. There has never been a wide economic analysis done on the bill by Treasury. This bill has been driven by a political imperative rather than an economic one. The lack of a cost-benefit analysis means that there is not the information present for anyone to make a decision, or at least an informed decision. To embark on major infrastructural development based on very little economic analysis is reckless at best. In the absence of such analysis, it is difficult for any side to determine whether there is going to be a real return to taxpayers. Who is more extreme? A National Party who are happy to spend your money in times of economic hardship with no cost-benefit analysis, or politicians that seek fiscal restraint in times of economic hardship and require sound evidence to justify our government spending programs? On this point alone, I urge the House not to support this bill. The reality of the telecommunications industry in New Zealand is that it is a network industry. Therefore, it is inevitable that the government has some role to play in regulation. The issue is whether this bill enhances the goals that we as New Zealanders would like to see in the telecommunication industry. The central goal that we are concerned about is enhancing efficiency in the industry. Does this bill seek to further this end? Simply, it does not. There are two major reasons in support of this conclusion. First, the government is once again looking at entering into the telecommunication market with both money and heavy-handed regulation in order to try and actively pick future technology winners with taxpayers' money. New Zealand and Australia are guinea pigs in going down a government-determined UFB path. That alone should worry us. There may be a case for government involvement as it is a network industry, but this bill imposes a singular future on a complex industry. The central difficulty with government investment in this area is that there is a need for significant investment coupled with a high commercial risk. The development and use of UFB in the future is not a fait accompli. If it were, the risk calculus would heavily favour private investment. It is possible that the next generation of wireless networks could potentially deliver the speed of UFB, and on that basis alone, some of us do not consider that UFB is necessarily the future of the telecommunication industry in New Zealand. If the government is wrong and technological developments favour other ways to provide internet, there is a large opportunity cost for New Zealand. The opportunity cost is borne out in two ways. First, in a static sense, $1.5 billion has been invested in a way that has a low return. If the money was left in the hands of private individuals, they could seek out more productive investments, leading to greater prosperity for New Zealand as a whole. Second, in a dynamic sense, there is an opportunity cost for future development in the telecom or the telecommunications industry. The bill means that New Zealand companies have been artificially incentivised due to the government's subsidy to invest in the rollout and development of a technology that may become increasingly irrelevant. This might be particularly true for the fibre to the home aspect. This approach will see us down the road of path dependency. Once the network has been built, path dependency will ensure it keeps on being used and developed because the fixed cost will be much lower. This occurs because the set of decisions that one faces in the future are limited by the decisions made today. This hinders the long-term development within the telecommunication to the detriment of us all. Second, it may be that this investment will produce low-value returns for New Zealanders. It is unclear whether New Zealanders are actually utilising telecommunications infrastructure to its capacity at present. Motu has done the only empirical work in this area, and they concluded that faster broadband speeds are likely to have negligible impact on the New Zealand economy. Again, such investment is extreme on the part of National. The little evidence that there is suggests that we should not invest. At the heart of the problem here is that there is not enough information at present to determine whether this project is a waste of money or not. The government has moved quickly to implement an election promise and have not been able to produce the evidence that favours support for the proposal. If we are going to spend $1.5 billion, I would rather see a greater emphasis given to efficiency and competition within the telecommunication industry. For this to result from current policy, I suggest we would need to create a situation where we have true open access. The development of our network by new consumers taking up the service. This means that the costs involved are met as they sell to consumers. This would be akin to the way Sky TV boxes have been distributed. Mr. Speaker, this would maximise competition without the need for heavy-handed regulation. The government has said that without a regulatory holiday, it will cost at least another $400 million. There is so much uncertainty around the regulatory surroundings that it may well be desirable to spend that $400 million up front in order to get rid of the regulatory holiday and to allow for greater competition in future. This is a problem that I faced in the steel industry in the 1980s and found it better to pay $2 billion up front so that we could get rid of the large tariffs that were impeding competition in the industry. The second point I'd make is that we should abolish the TSO requirement for telecom. 1 and 2 are not mutually exclusive. This would allow costs to fall where they should, ending the practice of cost subsidisation from urban to rural areas. In addition, it would force other technological development to solve the problem. It is not clear that there is a good case for mandating any form of universal service. As part of this, I would advocate also getting rid of the Kiwi share and free calling requirements. Mr. Speaker, this bill has not been well thought out. What we have is an election promise, and that's what this is all about. In terms of any studies that have made, the indication are that the money will be largely wasted.
Mr. Speaker.